Coming up today on LinkedIn News Live, communicating effectively is a tough task that even seasoned leaders get wrong. Today we're learning from 4 participants as they get live feedback on their presentation skills from Trainer-in-Chief Pete Mockaitis. That and your comments next. Hi, welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation begins with you. I'm Nina Melendez, and today we have a really neat show. I'm super excited. We're just going to jump right into it. We're talking communication, presentation, how to do it effectively and clearly so that you win over your audience. I'm going to bring in our featured guest, Pete Mockaitis. Pete, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Hi, Nina. You too. Great to be here.
So for context for our viewers, I want to give a little intro to you. You deliver one-on-one training and coaching to hundreds of world-class leaders across 50 countries. You help them to sharpen their skills, their communication skills, and some of your clients include Google, Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, the UN. So you're up there. You can also, viewers, check out his LinkedIn learning courses. He's got 47 on the platform, so check it out. Pete, so happy that we get to pick your brain today.
Oh, thank you, Nina. I'm happy to be here.
So psychologists say that we've got about 7 seconds to make a first impression, right? I want to know what I can do in those first 7 seconds to make sure that that first impression is a good one.
Sure thing. Well, I'd recommend, first of all, that if you know you've got a really short window, you can prep for that pretty well. You don't have to develop a half hour or an hour long program or bit of content to dazzle in those first 7 seconds, but you might just give some thought to what are folks likely to say to me in this context in terms of if it's an interview. It's like, hey, how was the trip out? You know, just kind of be ready for those sorts of things. Or if it's an investment situation, to say, well, why should I invest in your company? Or how are you doing? Or how do you know the host? Or what brings you to this event? And so just sort of kind of take a moment to predict what's the most likely first things that we're going to be discussing, and then have your 7 seconds ready to go.
So preparation is key, is what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So when these business leaders come to you and ask you for advice, what do you find is a reoccurring theme in your coaching and in the need there?
Certainly. Well, frequently in a business leader situation, it's a matter of there's a lot of stress and overwhelm occurring. But when we're specifically talking about communications, we're zooming in on how to most effectively persuade. Usually we're looking to get a yes of some sort in terms of a yes, I'll give you investment, or yes, I'm going to hire you, or yes, you've got my business. I'm going to go ahead and complete the sale there. So that's most often what folks are after is getting the yes they want in making a great case or a persuasive pitch.
Yes.
Well done.
You did it, Pete.
Nailed it.
So English isn't my first language, and I once it became my primary language, we moved, we lived abroad, and then I learned a different language. So my issue with communication tends to be, I worry if I'm pronouncing something correctly. I have multiple languages knocking around in my head. Any advice for people who are like me, who are bilingual or trilingual, and maybe English isn't their first language, and they have to be clear in their presentation? What do you say to those folks?
Certainly. Well, so far I would say, Nina, you're nailing it. So that's working out great for you. And I would just recommend asking for the feedback in advance and doing some prep and getting some input from native speakers, because it's intriguing in terms of sometimes the certain words don't connect in terms of it's the literal translation, but it comes across a little bit different. Idiomatic usage, I guess, would be the precise English phrase that we're using. And so I think if you do a run through with some folks who are native speakers, if you have some discomfort there, you'll say, yeah, that all sounds good and normal. It's like, oh, actually watch out for that word. There's a bit of a connotation there, which isn't so friendly and it's not what you're going for. It's like, oh, so glad I prepped and went through that. So if you can find some folks that you trust and are going to give you some candid input, do a pre-check with them and you're in good shape.
So I'm hearing a recurring theme of preparation. On your podcast, you also talk a lot about feedback. Why is feedback so important, especially in a work environment?
Oh, feedback that's one of One of my favorite things. It's so powerful because, well, we have these blind spots. We don't know what we don't know, but by definition, that's what makes it a blind spot. We can't see it. And so if you don't find the courage and the humility to ask about that, then it will never be surfaced for you and you can never address it. And so I think a lot of times there's some real discomfort associated with going there because it's like, I don't even want to hear that I'm doing something badly or poorly or wrongly. But unfortunately, if you are, other people know about it. They might be talking about it. It could be showing up later on in your review or not even actually articulated in the review, but it's holding you back. And so I think if you can find the ability to, deep within your heart, to somehow grow to love and appreciate that feedback. I heard, I think it was in Adam Grant's book, Think Again, and he was talking to Daniel Kahneman. He said, I love being wrong. It's like, what? He said, because it's the only way I really know that I've learned something. I think that's a beautiful reframe right there in terms of if you hear that you've done something incorrectly, you can rejoice in that because now you have an opportunity to improve. I get excited when I learn that I've got a virus or some junk or some malware on my computer. That's weird. But the reason I do so is because I had no idea. That's been slowing down my performance this whole time. Once I clean that up, I'm going to be off to the races and got some rocket fuel here. So likewise, if you discover, hey, you're doing a weird thing where you shift your shoulders when you're talking. It's like, oh, I didn't know. That's kind of embarrassing. But now you know, I can address that and I will come across more professional and confident forever. That's good news.
I had a boss once who used to say feedback is a gift, and it
Amen.
stuck with me, and I love it. So I'm glad you enjoy feedback and giving feedback, because we've got a treat for you and for our viewers. We have 4 LinkedIn members, 4 brave souls, who each want to work on a different facet of their communication. And they're going to come on one each at a time and present to you, Pete. And you're going to ask them a mock question that has to do with whatever it is that they want to work on. And they're going to have 2 minutes to respond to your question or to your comment. And then you're going to have about 3 minutes to give them feedback, something they did really well, something they can work on. Yeah, sound good?
I love it.
I'm excited. Let's bring in our first guest, Cassie Dickerson. Cassie, welcome to LinkedIn News Live.
Hey there.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Cassie, we're so excited to have you here. Cassie is the Director of Technology Commercialization at The Ohio State University. And Cassie wants to focus on how to better communicate and present herself during interviews. I'm really excited about this because the thing with interviews is you never really know how you do, because if you don't get the job, you don't hear back. And even if you do get the job, people don't say, necessarily tell you what you did well. So Cassie, I'm excited for this. So like I said earlier, Pete's just going to ask him a mock interview question. I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. So this is an adventure. So go ahead, Pete, take it away.
All right, let's just assume we jumped right into a mid-interview, and here's a tough one. Cassie, tell me about a time you failed.
Pete, that's a great question. Thank you. This one sticks out in my brain very heavily. It's from a role that I had planning a large national special security event in Cleveland. And there was an element of the job that I just had to get right. So I was working in the transportation department, and it was a logistic and operational role. And this sounds silly, but we needed to know exactly how many numbers of parking spots there were in a specific parking garage. And so I rolled up my sleeves and I went out there and I started counting the spots. And the first time I came back, the numbers were off. So I then took a few members of my team with me that I trusted and said, okay, guys, we're going to get this right. Let's count these spots again. And so we went back and we counted the spots again, and the numbers were different, but also off from what we expected. And this was important because we were negotiating price per spot with a partner. And I was presenting this information to my boss, who was relying on me to get it right. And I had the responsibility to give him the right information because he was going to believe me and then advocate and negotiate accordingly. And so I noticed that the numbers were off again to what he expected. And I I then went out a third time again by myself and redid the counting and finally got it right and was able to give my boss the correct information to be able to negotiate with our partner. So it took a lot of humility in that moment to acknowledge that I had not done it properly, and also some extra time and willingness to go back and get it right so that my team could succeed in the task that we had set out to do.
Cassie,
Okay.
that you nailed it. Oh, sorry. Nailed the 2 minutes. I'm sorry, Pete. What's your feedback?
Well, hey, you nailed the timing. That's great. Well, we got lots of things were going really well there. So I love that you had a lot of friendliness. It seemed like you had a genuine, warm, a way about you in terms of you weren't like, uh-oh, failure. You weren't sort of spooked or freaked out. You seemed calm, graceful, at peace with that. There was just a real good vibes going through there. You seemed comfortable in your own skin going there. You didn't have very many uhs, ums, likes, you knows, vocal pauses. It was pretty darn smooth and polished, as though I had the impression that you had prepped this specific question. You're ready for it. So if you did, well done on your preparation. If you didn't, well done on your ad-libbing, because that came across very strong in many ways. In terms of the actual content of what you shared, it was a cool story in that I like that you set it up front. If you heard of the STAR framework, I think that's a good one. In terms of situation, task, action, and result. And you covered all your bases there, which is great. If any of those pieces are missing, then you can have some real confusion in terms of, wait, what are we doing? What were you responsible for? Well, yeah, so but what did you actually do there? And don't leave us hanging. What was the result, the ending there? So I like that it was a complete story. It was succinct. You showed some good resourcefulness and humility, some virtues there in terms of getting some help and having other people get in on the picture. And so that lots of things going well there. In terms of improvement opportunities, one, I guess I was a little fuzzy in terms of the numbers were off. And what's tricky about that for me is I'm thinking the number of parking spots would seem to be an absolute kind of true number. Like there is a number that is true. And so you might not know it yet, and you might miscount. So I guess when I heard off, I was a little fuzzy on, as compared to what? Like, what is the source of truth? How do we know that they're off? And I heard a little later, it's like relative to what they were expecting, or maybe that they had previously been told. But that was kind of fuzzy for me. It's like, well, how do we know that your numbers are right or versus wrong? And what's the standard that we're comparing it against? It was a little bit confusing for a moment. And so that kind of took me out of listening to you for a bit in terms of what's going on there. I would love it when I hear a failure story. I think just as we get, roped into a great book or a movie or a TV show, there's some arc, some emotional drama there. And I would have loved to, I know it could be uncomfortable, but to hang out in the unpleasant place for a little bit in terms of like the embarrassment or the negative reaction. Or did you hear Cassie, seriously, I need you to be able to count. I don't know what went down or what didn't go down. But if we can hear a little more there about, yeah, that was a failure. That was embarrassing and uncomfortable in that moment. So that then from like a story arc, we can get there all the better. I guess a final pro point, I'm not deliberately using the sandwich technique for the record. That's a whole nother conversation. But this is something I think will probably come up a few times, is that someone sounds dynamic when there is variety in their pitch and their pacing and their tone. Sometimes higher. That's interesting. And sometimes lower, we're serious. Sometimes louder, more forceful. Other times thoughtful and quiet. And sometimes kind of faster because we're excited. And other times slowing it down so we really feel that and we pause it. And I think you did a nice job of being dynamic on those dimensions. And I'd say keep that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a good job. I'm so impressed.
Great. That was very helpful, and I love hearing your perspective because, sometimes we connect the dots in our head, but it doesn't always connect the dots for the listener. So I really appreciate you sharing that feedback. I'm going to take all of these tips. I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Good luck.
Thanks so much, Cassie. All right, so that was Cassie Dickerson joining us from Ohio. We've got another guest coming on, Brett Deshevsky. Brett is, oh, Brett, where are you? Where are you located? You told me.
I'm located in right outside of Philadelphia.
Right outside of Philly, that's right. He is the co-founder and COO of the Healthcare Huddle. And Brett specifically wants to focus on how to pitch his business. So Pete, I'm gonna leave you to play angel investor or something, and go ahead, take it away.
Okay, well, so you pitch your business to many stakeholders, but I'll wear the hat of angel investor this time around. So say, all right, Brett, how much you need, and why should I give it to you?
Sure. Well, thanks, Pete. It's a pleasure meeting you. So right now we need about $1 million for our operations. And so basically I'll give you the pitch on what we're doing here. So staying informed on healthcare is unnecessarily complex, boring, and inconvenient. Simply put, it's hard work to stay up to date. But what if you can learn about the healthcare industry in a way that was quick, easy to understand, and actually fun? And so that's why we started Healthcare Huddle, a modern media company that empowers busy health students and professionals to stay up to date on the healthcare industry in an easy way, allowing them to focus on better care and succeeding in their studies, which is very important. And so through a healthy dose of our weekly newsletter, it becomes easy, enjoyable, and convenient to be informed in healthcare all the time. The only side effect is that you're more informed and staying ahead. And so you'll feel like you have a best friend in the healthcare industry guiding you through all the latest in healthcare news. And so you can join our growing community at healthcarehuddle.com and help build the future leaders in healthcare.
Okay.
Awesome, Brett. Pete, what do you think? Will you give him that $1 million?
Certainly. Well,
hand it at me.
well, Brett, what's fun is, we talk about pitch, and I really did feel a little bit of like the Shark Tank energy there, which was fun in terms of, and there's a time and a place for that. You want to know your audience, and some folks, well, hey, having fun is better than not having fun, right? It's more engaging and entertaining and sort of draws you in. Like the only side effect, I mean, is like, side effect. I thought that was genuinely amusing. I kind of chuckled a little bit. And so that was cool. And so I was digging that. And in terms of like the content itself, I thought that it's true. Healthcare is crazy confusing. I had to get my own health insurance. Oh my gosh. I had to have an agent, and then there was confusion, and still I was surprised at how I got the most expensive plan. And yet somehow all these specialists for my kids are not in the network. What? So I think there's absolutely a clear need there. Which is huge in terms of any business. So I appreciate that. And I would say that the pitch felt for me a little bit like I was sort of the end consumer, like the user of your offer, in terms of, why do I want to spend any time on healthcare stuff that's boring and confusing? Oh, you're making it kind of fun and interesting and clear and easy. Well, that's nice, because I could use some of that in my world. So I think that's great. And you painted that specifically, we're talking about, health students, like I guess med students and the like, as well as healthcare professionals. And so I like that I have a clear target audience that we're working toward. And for a critique, I mean, it's a little tricky in terms of only having 2 minutes, but I guess if I'm thinking about dollars, I kind of want to hear a little bit about dollars. And so I think you made a nice case for, hey, this is a need and we are filling it and we are doing it well. I kind of wanted to get a sense for how this is going to be a prudent investment for me in terms of either kind of long-term user growth and at a rapid pace and later monetization, or, hey, right here, right now, already got some stable cash flows. You could just expect that to go. Or, boy, we've proven our case. We have just tremendous search engine rankings and a social following that's growing. And if we just had $1 million, we would just get some more content writers and crank out more of the stuff that's already working fantastically. And we could totally expect to triple our page views and our ad revenues, or whatever the revenue model was. I actually wasn't quite clear on our providers, paying for that convenience and time saving, kind of like I forgot what that was called, the briefings, you would know. the briefings on terms of like, hey, if I've got Bell's palsy, what's the best treatment and the latest research? The up-to-dates, I think they're called for the physicians.
Up-to-date, yes. That's what a lot of med students use, and doctors.
And so I'd be kind of intrigued, like, hey, are they hospitals going to be paying for that? Is that the model? Or is it more so, advertising? Is it more so the folks who are just looking to save some time? Is it a kind of clever monetization approach that I hadn't even conceived of? That's sort of like, hey, well, in the middle when these transactions occur, we're right there facilitating and taking a slice, kind of like a marketplace. So I wasn't quite sure, how does this turn into money, and why do I feel great that my million is going to turn into several million if I were to give it to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that feedback. And we are working on those business models, advertising, getting providers to pay for the service. So if I'm back on in a couple of months or a couple of years, I'll have a better update for you.
Brett, maybe one day we'll have you as a guest on our show to talk about your business, and we can say, hey, he pitched it here live on LinkedIn. So
that'd be exciting.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Brett.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That was Brett, just outside of Philly. I want to bring in actually a couple of questions, Pete, for you from our live stream. We've got Dr. Shannon Lerner, who is echoing some of your feedback. Speak less like you're reading from writing, and speak to us in a more casual, approachable way without losing the message. That's Dr. Shannon Lerner's feedback, which is great. Thank you. And Nora asks how to address feedback in the virtual space. So this is to your comment earlier, Pete. What do you think? When we're all interacting via Zoom, how do you give good, authentic, kind, constructive feedback?
Sure thing. Well, I think that's the first point in terms of being good, authentic, and kind and connecting. Like Zoom is probably, in most circumstances, a superior medium than email, for example. So you want to be higher touch and higher empathy. And so the more that you can show that you care, and I think Kim Scott just nails this in her book, Radical Candor, that you want to care personally and challenge directly. So, because when you're sharing some things that you'd like people to do differently, that could feel real uncomfortable in a hurry. And video is a great medium to show, hey, I care about you. I'm smiling at you. I want you to flourish and succeed. I'm not trying to tear you down just because I've got a weird self-esteem thing and I need to make you seem less. I want you to succeed. And so the more like your facial expressions and your intonations can convey those sorts of things, the better. And email, it's often lost. And of course, if you were to have a really strong positive relationship and it's a little thing, then go for it. Like, hey, I'd like for those titles to be a little bit more compelling and grab you by the throat. Okay, fine. Emails can work just fine. But if I'm saying something a bit more intense, like, Nina, I think we really lost credibility with the client there when you didn't have answers to, okay, now that hurts, and that's bigger. And so you want to be able to set the stage there in terms of, hey, Nina, you do so many things so well, and I've been delighted with how you have really enriched our client relationships so consistently. So it was a little bit out of character when I noticed this yesterday. And
so, Pete, so is it important to couch then the feedback with something positive at the top? Or sometimes I find when I'm giving feedback, I start by saying, look, I care about your professional development, and this is what this is about. But then I wonder if that's perhaps a female thing to do. I've had male bosses who go straight to the point. Nina, you've missed it with the client. So what is your take on that? Direct, or do we couch it and make sure the other person feels a certain way?
Well, I think that there's a kind of a lot of variables in this picture in terms of what's the nature of your relationship, what's your natural personality, and how do they prefer to receive information. And you want to think about all of those things. But I think couching it, I think works well. Although sometimes it can be more uncomfortable. It's like, you'd never talk to me like this. The hammer's about to drop and I'm getting really scared. So I would watch out for that kind of dynamic. But hopefully, ideally, feedback is not super intense because it can occur on a recurring basis. Like during our weekly or monthly one-on-ones, that's just part of the conversation. And so it's
Great.
routine, and it's not a big scary dun 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 kind of a moment, but that's just how we relate to each other normally, and away we go. And so, one time I received some feedback, and they started up by saying, hey, is just work, and nobody's gonna die. And so Noe's like, oh man, I really screwed up, and I did. I really had screwed up, but the notion was helpful in terms of just level setting us. Like, yeah,
Right.
there's some things that you're really gonna have to work on, and that had a negative impact for us. But at the same time, let's remember what's important here.
Right.
And I actually appreciated it and remember it to this day.
That's awesome. I actually want to bring in our next member participant. Her name is Jana Fritz. Jana, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Nina and Pete.
Hi there, Jana.
So Jana is Assistant Director and Digital Communications Expert, and she wants to focus on how to pitch herself. So let's pretend maybe that this is like a networking event, Jana, and you're networking with people, and Pete is someone you happen to meet. Yeah, Pete, I'm going to let you take it away.
Yeah. So what brings you to Digital Communications Con 2021, Jana?
Well, Pete, first of all, my name's Yana. I use she, her pronouns. I work in digital communications at a prestigious university in New York City. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to bring internal and external camaraderie to different organizations, particularly complex organizations that need just a bit of help, whether it's internal or external communications and talking to stakeholders, students, alumni, or any type of professionals that need to learn more about complex policies or procedures at universities. I'm an expert in social media, editorial strategy, and internal and crisis communications, deep roots working in federal agencies and, like I said, universities. I'll help any organization assess complex organizational priorities and use my strategic communication skills and relationship management skills to take that complexity and will it down into user-focused language, and really bring a lot of humor and energy to the job, as well as just a hard work ethic and objective-driven work at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, so let's see. I would say my take here is I think that you were prepared. You were ready to go. Which is cool. And I really did come across that you have a broad range of expertise that you can draw from. And so there may be many potential needs I could have served by coming to you. And so that came across nicely in terms of, there's a lot of things, whether it's crisis communications or whether it's social media, whether it's internal stakeholders, whether it's external. So I thought that was handy in terms of, I might be reaching out to you for a wide array of issues, and that's kind of convenient to have a resource that can be versatile and flexible there. In terms of my critiques, I would say it felt a little bit like you were answering a different question. In terms of, I said, hey, what brings you to this conference? And I guess I was kind of expecting more of a light, friendly vibe to start in terms of, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I work here and I'm really passionate about this thing and I was excited about these speakers. And I guess we're just sort of making up a whole fictional world, right? But, so I guess that's sort of what I was imagining in terms of if we're just kind of casually chatting at a cocktail party or something, that we would warm it up a little bit with more of a friendly connecting. Here's kind of a little bit of the things I happen to find extra interesting and what's cool about this event. Although I put you in a tight spot because we just made up an event that we were at.
Yeah.
So that was my thinking there is I felt like I kind of got a fire hose might be too strong a word, but I kind of got a lot early. And I think that if I were interviewing you for a job and I said, so tell me about the breadth of your experience, that response might be dead on in terms of, oh, okay, I got you. So we got those are the kinds of things that you can handle. Great to know. In sort of a social, we're just kind of getting acquainted a little bit. It felt kind of like a lot at once. I'd also say it felt like you were using a script, and that's okay for starters. I would say ideally you want to internalize that such that feels pretty natural. Right. And it felt like with the rate of speech was pretty quick. And I know when there's a clock, it's
Right.
It puts the pressure
I'm a
on
fast
us.
talker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I got 2 minutes. I gotta go.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
fast talking is one, and I might recommend just sort of listening to recordings of you and hearing how it goes.
Okay.
I've sort of looked at this a lot, and I found that if you like TED Talks, I found Al Gore, in my opinion, Al Gore is too slow.
Okay.
Sean Acor is too fast.
Mm-hmm.
I love both of what they have to say. I'm just kind of, if I were talking about what's an ideal rate of speed, and hopefully you'll have some variety in there. Sometimes I'm really excited and fast. Other times we slow it down. Chew on that.
It's so similar to what you told Cassie about sort of inflection and pausing and yeah, great. What Yana? What do you think about what you heard?
Yeah, this is great feedback. I tend to use like and so I actually want to ask a question. Is there any way to not get tripped up on self-critique or something when you are making a pitch? Because I tend to critique myself a lot.
Sure thing. Yeah, I think that what helps me is I think about two mindsets in terms of there's preparation and there's performance, and they're completely different. During preparation, you do want to kind of be critical in a kind way of yourself in terms of saying, ooh, I had too many ahs, ums. By the way, I think the Speako app is really cool for automatically counting that for you and watching your numbers improve over time. Kind of fun. And then when you're in performance zone, it's time to let that go in terms of we're being here and now and with the person, trying to form that connection. And it can be easier said than done, but I think the more that I think you can sort of be in your body, in the senses of what's occurring. Maybe you put your feet firmly on the floor. You have a deep breath. You sort of look at their eyes and notice, oh, Hazel, that's nice. You know, sort of the more that you're in your senses and in the moment and the present, the better, as opposed to, oh, how am I doing? Am I screwing up? That was too many uhs. Oh, they probably think I sound dumb. You know, and I think it's something like a mindfulness practice helps you just strengthen that mental muscle of continually returning your attention back to the thing, your breath or whatever, that you want it to be focused on, as opposed to the negative self-chatter.
Pete, I'm going to have to cut you here because we've got one more person. We're running out of time. But Yana, thank you so much for joining us and for asking your questions. So our last participant, her name is Carolina. Carolina Gomez joins us. Hi, Carolina. How are you?
Hello, Nina and Pete.
Hi there.
So Carolina is a business development and international event director, and she wants to get feedback on how to pitch an idea, herself in an idea. So let's do the cocktail hour networking event one more time. Pete, take it away.
Business development idea. Okay, so I'm going to say, well, so Carolina, tell me, what business development approach are you most excited about right now?
Well, I have to say, I actually have a magazine. I'm the co-founder of Branders Magazine. We are a digital publication specialized in branding strategy, innovation, and design. And we've been in the market for 6 years. Started out as a side hustle, and think we're ready, to take the business off the ground at the moment. So I'm super excited. I have a special love for learning, training, education. I truly believe that education is the key to bridge the gap. So all of my business development ideas, whether it's through my daytime job or my magazine, all have to do with education. So kind of like to share a little bit more about the magazine or what drives my interest. Let me tell you what we do. With the magazine, we teach strategy professionals and founders how to grow their businesses through branding, how to establish an authentic brand by building a strong customer following through different disciplines, for instance, digital transformation, storytelling, sustainable branding, and innovation. And we are a global publication, so anybody can access the content, and we have readers from all over the globe. And what really drives my interest is to help people learning that branding is not just a logo, that branding comes from the inside of the company, and reflect, and everything that you do within the inside, it will reflect serving your customer. So that's kind of what drives my interest. And lastly, we do have and it's one of the favorite things about the magazine, we have readers and we have contributors from all over the globe, which is great because we have people from different backgrounds and different cultures, which makes the conversation super rich, and it help us brings different perspective and different opinions and different points of view, which is like sometimes it's hard to get when you're following like the mainstream media.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
Carolina, great. You hit the 2 minutes right on the nose. Pete, what are some of your thoughts?
Lovely. Well, I would say that the enthusiasm really came through in terms of like the passion, your interest. You know, it's 6 years as a side hustle. Education is the bridge that makes the impact. I thought that was really there. That an authentic brand is more than just a logo. I think that was great in terms of like the enthusiasm shining through, and so I could tell you were excited, and I was excited because you were excited. I guess I was where my mind was when I asked the question was I kind of wanted to hear, and this isn't all on you, it's partially on me. And I kind of wanted to hear a particular in terms of like a strategy or a tactic or an approach or a thing that is just lighting you up right now, in particular, in terms of, I don't know if it's a digital thing or a social media thing or whatever, or maybe to hear some numbers like, hey, 6 years as a side hustle, we're about to move into a new territory. It's like, oh, tell me about that. Like have some revenue figures or viewership or subscription figures hit an interesting threshold. Is there a particular growth rate that you're seeing and you think that, wow, it might really make sense to shift full time into this, such that I can hear that not only are you passionate about this, but you've got something that is clearly a winner of a hit that is resonating with people. It's cool that it's reaching a lot of people in a lot of countries, but I would just love to be blown over with like, hey, our page views tripled, to 750,000 this month. It's like, okay, hot dog, you really got something here. That's awesome. So I'd love to hear a little bit in terms of like a particular tactic or strategy or trend or thing that's going on, as well as a little bit of evidence that this thing you've got, it really is truly on a rocket flight.
Got it. And I usually send stats, and I usually mention like 2 or 3 stats like during my first initial like communication, but I don't do it. It's super interesting that you mentioned that. I don't do it like on the first phone call or on the first Zoom meeting. I usually send it as a follow-up. Thank you so much, because sometimes I feel that I'm super overconfident, and I don't want to. I want to sound confident, and I want to show that we have a track record and some credibility because we have good numbers. But I never said like in person, just because I don't want to come across like, oh, we're the best media out there, even though we have really good numbers by now. But thank you so much. I'm going to make sure I'm going to start like including that within my first pitch, first interview, because I usually do it like through email after like follow up or thank you note. But I'll make sure to do that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you
so much, Carolina.
I think that you're dead on.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. Great job. And actually, Pete, that's sort of my last question here. Carolina brought up a good point about not wanting to seem overconfident. Is there such a thing? If you're doing an interview, if you're trying to pitch yourself and your business, is there such a thing as sounding too confident? I know there's definitely a thing as sounding not confident and not confident enough. What about the opposite?
It's possible, and I've seen it before, but it is much more rare than the opposite, in my experience. And I think that the telltale signs for me are when I hear a lot of definitely and obviously's. I might just recommend purging the word obviously from your vocabulary. And sometimes I think people use it as a vocal pause, or they're not quite confident that the thing they said, they think that maybe sounds kind of dumb, and they don't want the other person to think that they think that was an insightful thing that they said. So they say obviously as a little bit of a crutch. And so I would just recommend purge the word obviously from your vocabulary, because when someone says obviously to me about something I didn't know, I find that a little bit insulting. Like, oh, I guess I'm just dumb because it was obvious and I didn't know.
It might not be obvious to you if you're not right. Absolutely, yeah.
So if there's a lot of obviously, definitelys, or you say something, you say, right. So we're going to have to triple the revenue in the next 3 years, right? And so it's like, well, I don't know if that is right. Like maybe. And so that's a little bit premature or presumptuous. I'm getting a little judgy here. But if you sort of do a lot of that too early. So I think there is such a thing. It is much rarer. And I say, so long as you're being friendly and fact-based and not having too much heavy-handed, definitely, obviously is right, I am so amazing, then you're fine. Great. Right. Obviously. Now I feel very underconfident speaking to you, Pete. Thanks for that. Pete, it was really great having you on. It was such a joy. The stream loved it. We've got George saying that he learned a lot about receiving and sharing feedback. Dr. Shannon Lerner, again, she says she appreciates that you are considering the speakers and treating them based on how they experience and on how they experience things and their learning process. So thank you, Pete. You, and Sam says that she loves that Yana started with pronouns at the beginning of her pitch. So Yana, well done. People appreciate that. Pete, thanks again. We loved having you. Check out, for those on the stream who are watching, check out his LinkedIn learning courses. He's got 47 of them. You can learn a lot. Pete, thanks. Nina. That was Pete Mockaitis, a founder of How to Be Awesome at Your Job. Well, tomorrow we've got a great show for you. We will be discussing the crisis in India, what to do about the shortage of oxygen and vaccines. We'll be speaking to our editor-in-chief who is out there in India. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Nina Melendez. This is LinkedIn News Live.